Have you ever stopped and thought, maybe, while your phone is doing yet another update, whether the really foundational leaps in technology have actually slowed down?
It's a really interesting question. We see so much digital stuff, apps and updates.
Exactly, but are we making those huge ground-up changes like, say, a century ago?
Yeah.
Because there's this compelling argument that maybe we've hit a kind of wall.
Huh.
So today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating, sometimes controversial take on that very idea. And it comes from Peter Thiel.
Right, the tech figure investor.
Yeah.
Very influential.
Yeah, and this dive is built on a great exploration from the Bob Murphy Show, episode 431. Bob Murphy and his guest, Adam, really got into Thiel's thinking, pulling from a recent chat Thiel had with Ross Douthat, too.
Okay, so they covered quite a bit.
They did. So our mission for you today is simple. We want to give you a shortcut to understanding these core arguments. We're talking technological stagnation, government-aligned tech, and Thiel's really provocative idea about populism maybe being a catalyst for breakthroughs.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is, but you'll come away with a much clearer picture of these tangled debates, maybe even a new way to look at innovation.
It helps to start with Thiel himself, I think. His background really shapes his views. Co-founder of PayPal, obviously, Palantir, which is, often in the news.
Right.
And even backing things like the Seasteading Institute, these floating city concepts, he's definitely a big deal, wealthy, influential. Admired in some libertarian circles, for sure.
But there's also skepticism, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Quite a bit, actually. And a lot of that does seem to center around Palantir.
Yeah, let's get into that. Palantir specifically.
Right.
What's the core philosophy there that stirs things up?
So Alex Karp, Palantir CEO, is surprisingly direct about it. He openly criticizes Silicon Valley for being too focused on consumer gadgets, apps and social media.
Huh?
Karp argues that tech's main job, really, should be serving government and military goals. That's a huge shift from the usual Silicon Valley story.
Definitely different.
Yeah, so it positions Palantir as this AI-driven surveillance and defense contractor. And they benefit massively from government contracts. That's key.
Right.
And on the show, Murphy and Adam, they voiced real concern about this.
Yeah.
They kind of question if this move away from market-driven innovation towards government dependence might actually stifle progress in the long run.
So that focus on government tech with Palantir, it really sets the scene for Thiel's bigger arguments, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Because he takes this idea of technology's purpose and links it straight to politics. He's basically saying this feeling of stagnation we mentioned is tied to the political shifts we're seeing now. How does he make that leap?
It's a really counterintuitive link he draws. Talking with Douthat, Thiel suggested that these recent political realignments in Silicon Valley, some tech leaders becoming more open to figures like Trump, perhaps in 2024, aren't just about specific policies.
Okay, so what's the root cause then, according to Thiel?
He argues it stems from a deep frustration with what he calls default liberalism. That's his term for the kind of mainstream consensus in institutions, in academia.
Right, the establishment view, maybe?
Sort of, yeah. And Thiel believes this consensus has, maybe unintentionally, led to this state of fundamental technological stagnation. His point is that traditional ways of governing just haven't delivered the big breakthroughs anymore.
So the political disruption is a symptom or a potential cure?
He seems to see it as potentially both. The frustration fuels the disruption, but he also suggests that disruption, even through populism, might be the shock the system needs to actually get innovating again.
Okay, that brings us to his big idea, the stagnation thesis. Can you lay that out?
Sure. So his core point is this. If you look outside of computers, software, the digital world, the U.S. has basically been stuck technologically for decades.
Decades, that sounds strong.
It is. Think about the period from, say, 1900 to 1950. We got aviation, widespread electricity, nuclear energy, early space programs.
Yeah.
Massive fundamental changes.
Okay, huge leaps.
Right. But Thiel says after 1950 or so, those kinds of foundational, world-changing innovations, they really slowed down. He even points to the word moonshot.
What about it?
It used to mean something real, tangible, like actually going to the moon with Apollo. Now, he argues, it's often just a buzzword for ambitious projects that sound good, but often don't really deliver fundamental breakthroughs, more symbolic than substantive.
As you're explaining this, it feels familiar. Like, I've heard similar economic arguments before.
You probably have. Bob Murphy on the show made the direct link to Tyler Cowen's idea of the Great Stagnation.
Ah, right, Tyler Cowen.
Yeah, Cowen argued the U.S. hit a sort of innovation plateau around the 1970s where productivity growth slowed down.
Okay.
And interestingly, Cowen also connected this period to rising inequality and changes in social policy. So it wasn't just about tech, it was broader.
Okay, so there's overlap with other economic thinking. Now, if Thiel says we are stuck, what's his fix? This is where it gets really controversial, right? The populism angle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is probably the most debated part of his argument. How could populism possibly help innovation?
Yeah, critics usually worry populists will attack science funding, be hostile to universities, that kind of thing.
And Thiel acknowledges those risks, but his view is, well, extremely contrarian. He basically suggests the current system, the universities, the funding bodies, the bureaucracies, is already so inefficient, so sclerotic, that any major disruption might actually be an improvement.
So it can't get much worse, in his view.
Pretty much. For him, the status quo is just too bogged down to produce real breakthroughs anymore. So maybe a force like populism, even with all its downsides, could be the thing that shakes everything loose, cuts through the red tape.
And he sees Trump-era populism in that light, as a potential partner for tech progress.
From his perspective, yes. Perhaps an imperfect partner, but a potential force for disruption that could, counterintuitively, clear the way for advancement. It's about breaking the existing structures he sees as failing.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Thiel's background, Palantir, the stagnation idea, the link to politics, and this very provocative populism cure. It really boils down to these big questions, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, is this technological stagnation actually real? And if it is real, is political disruption, especially something like populism, a remotely sensible way to fix it?
And it's interesting how the Bob Murphy show handled that. They really explored the nuances. You could hear their admiration for Thiel's ability to connect dots maybe others don't see.
Right. He definitely makes you think.
Absolutely. But they balanced that with real skepticism, real concern. They were weighing Thiel's optimism about disruption against the dangers.
Yeah.
Like could government-aligned tech like Palantir or chaotic populist politics actually end up hindering real innovation instead of helping it?
It's a genuine tension there, risk versus reward.
Exactly.
And for you listening, these aren't just, abstract academic points. This is about how we view the future of technology, its place in society, and the whole political scene unfolding right now.
Mm-hmm. These ideas provide a lens.
So, just to recap this deep dive, we've unpacked Peter Thiel's provocative connections between that feeling of technological slowdown, the rise of government-focused tech, and his, pretty controversial idea that populism might actually be a force to kickstart progress again.
We really hope you'll think about the implications here. What does this mean for how we define progress? Who gets to drive it? What's really holding it back?
Yeah, and it leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over. If that truly transformative foundational progress has slowed down, what kind of disruption, if any, do you think is needed to reignite our ingenuity on that grand scale again?
Is the answer more government partnership? Is it radical political shifts like Thiel hints at?
Or maybe it's something else entirely we haven't even considered yet.